She rode horses for him. She wore flak jackets for him. She posed in front of prison cells for him. She deported hundreds, arrested thousands, and turned herself into the most visible face of the most aggressive immigration crackdown in American history. She did everything Donald Trump asked her to do. And then, on a Thursday afternoon in March, he fired her on social media. No phone call, no private conversation, no warning. A Truth Social post. Gone. Just like that. The first cabinet secretary of Trump's second term to lose her job, discarded like a prop that had served its purpose. And the reason he fired her? She told the truth in a congressional hearing, and it made him furious as a murder hornet. Welcome. Subscribe right now, because what happened to Kristi Noem is not just a political personnel story. It is a window into the most ruthless and revealing dynamic inside the Trump White House. Who survives, who gets sacrificed, and why loyalty, no matter how absolute, no matter how public, no matter how personal the cost, is never enough if you become a liability on the wrong day. Let's go. Here is the story in its brutal simplicity. Kristi Noem spent 13 months as Secretary of Homeland Security executing Trump's signature agenda. She oversaw the largest deportation operation in American history. She celebrated ICE arrests on social media. She flew to El Salvador to pose in front of a mega prison where hundreds of Venezuelans were being held. She rode horseback near Mount Rushmore for government-funded advertising campaigns. She turned herself into a brand, the tough, photogenic face of America First immigration enforcement. But behind the glossy imagery, the agency she ran was in chaos, and the chaos eventually made it to Capitol Hill. On Tuesday, March 3rd, Noem sat before the Senate Judiciary Committee. Republican Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana, a man with degrees from Vanderbilt, Virginia, and Oxford, who has perfected the art of appearing like a simple country lawyer while dismantling witnesses with surgical precision, started asking questions about a $220 million advertising campaign, a campaign that featured Kristi Noem. On horseback, in costumes, prominently, repeatedly, produced on no-bid contracts awarded to firms with ties to Republican insiders, including a subcontractor linked to people in Noem's own orbit. $220 million taxpayer dollars spent on ads that promoted Kristi Noem. Kennedy pressed, Noem deflected, and then in the moment that sealed her fate, she said the one thing she could never take back. She told the committee that Trump approved the campaign. Trump approved it. According to Axios, when Trump found out she said that, he was, in an advisor's words, mad as a murder hornet. He called Kennedy directly after the hearing. The White House rushed out a statement saying the president did not sign off on a $220 million ad campaign. Absolutely not. And by Thursday afternoon, Trump posted on Truth Social that Kristi Noem was being moved to a newly created role as special envoy for the Shield of the Americas. A newly created role that did not exist before Thursday, a consolation title invented on the spot to dress up an execution as a promotion, the Washington version of being walked to your car by security. And the thing that triggered the execution was not corruption, not incompetence, not the dead Americans in Minneapolis, not the mismanaged disaster responses, not the alleged affair with her subordinate, not the mismanagement of DHS. It was dragging Trump's name into her mess. That is the unforgivable sin in this White House. Not failure, association. Now, here's the part of this story that reveals something far deeper about the Trump administration's operating system. Noem was not fired because of the $220 million campaign alone. She had been accumulating scandals for months, each one individually capable of ending a career in any normal administration. In Minneapolis, ICE agents under her supervision killed 2 American citizens, a mother of 3 named Renee Good and a veterans nurse named Alex Preddy. Noem's immediate response was to publicly label them domestic terrorists without evidence, without a trial, without even basic factual verification. She had to be removed from leading operations in Minnesota by Trump himself, replaced by border czar Tom Homan. She temporarily suspended TSA PreCheck during a government government shutdown, a decision so chaotic it had to be reversed within hours after the White House stepped in. She oversaw an agency where officials were, in the words of one insider, tired of their shit. She was the subject of credible reporting about an alleged extramarital affair with Corey Lewandowski, her unpaid subordinate and de facto chief of staff. Republicans on the Senate Judiciary Committee, not Democrats, Republicans, refused to say publicly whether they had confidence in her. Each of those scandals individually was survivable in Trump world, because in Trump world, the metric for survival is not competence, it's not legality, it's not even popularity. The metric is whether you make Trump look good or make Trump look bad. The moment she made Trump look like he approved a $220 million vanity campaign starring Kristi Noem on a horse, she failed the only test that matters in this administration, and she was gone within 48 hours. The replacement tells you everything. Senator Mark Wayne Mullen of Oklahoma, a man Trump watches on television according to White House aides who say Trump has called Mullen after combative cable news interviews to praise him. Not the most qualified immigration enforcement administrator, not the most experienced homeland security expert, the one Trump likes watching on TV. That is the appointment process for the secretary in charge of border security, immigration enforcement, disaster response, and counterterrorism in the United States of America. And the timing of all of this is what makes it truly extraordinary. Trump fired his DHS secretary in the middle of an active war against Iran, in the middle of a global oil crisis, in the middle of the most consequential foreign policy operation of his second term, while 13 Americans were dead and 140 wounded in combat, while oil was above $100 a barrel, while his approval rating was at its lowest since 2017. He paused all of that to fire his DHS secretary over a congressional hearing about a horseback ad campaign.
Because that is what this White House is, a place where the Iran war and the Kristi Noem firing happen in the same week. And neither one gets the sustained focus it deserves, because the operating rhythm of this administration is chaos management, not strategy. It is reaction, not planning. It is loyalty rewarded until the moment it becomes inconvenient, and then it is punished on Truth Social before the person being punished has even been told privately. Noem spent 13 months executing Trump's most politically important agenda. She took the hits publicly. She absorbed the criticism. She deported. She arrested. She performed. And when she needed cover from the boss, when she was sitting before a hostile committee and tried to spread the responsibility for a decision that had become a scandal, he denied her publicly to Reuters, saying he never knew anything about it. He never knew anything about it after 13 months of praising her spectacular results, after publicly promoting the immigration crackdown she was executing, after posting on Truth Social about the great work at DHS. He never knew anything about it. That is the Trump White House. You are useful until you are not. You are loyal until loyalty costs something. You execute the agenda until the agenda becomes a liability. And then you get a Truth Social post and a consolation title that did not exist before Thursday. And the next person takes your place and begins the same cycle. The biggest institution in American domestic security, the Department of Homeland Security, with over 240,000 employees responsible for border security, immigration enforcement, disaster response, cybersecurity, and counterterrorism, just had its leader fired over a horse ad and a congressional hearing in the middle of a war. Welcome to the Trump White House in 2026, where loyalty is the only currency and it expires the moment it becomes inconvenient, where the most important domestic security position in the country is filled by someone the president enjoys watching on television, where the first cabinet secretary to lose her job in the second term was not fired for the dead Americans in Minneapolis, not for the mismanaged disasters, not for the chaos inside her own department, but for saying the president's name when she should have kept quiet. Kristi Noem gave Donald Trump everything he asked for, and the moment she became a problem, he gave her a Truth Social post and a made-up title.
That is not loyalty rewarded. That is the price of proximity to power when the power decides you have served your purpose. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Kristi Noem was treated fairly? Who is the next one to fall in this administration? Subscribe right now to stay ahead of every breaking development. Share this video immediately, and we will see you in the next one.